You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 387 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. And I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin. He's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
It's going well, Jeremy. Thanks very much.
It's been a hot weekend. We had the Air and Water show in town here, and it's one of my favorite times of the year where the planes are buzzing by while you're on calls for work. You're watching the games. I went out to Twisted Spoke for the final time before it closes down at the end of August. So I went out there and was having beers on the rooftop there and watching the planes buzz by as well. So it was a good weekend to be out and about. The Cubs were in Toronto for the first part of the week and closed with 3 games against the Pirates, a 3-3 week, Pat.
Yeah, it was almost a disaster, I suppose, right? I mean, rarely does a 3-3 week seem so good, but given the fact that Cubs were really on the verge of a 2-4 or worse week, it could have been an utter disaster. So I guess we'll take it 3-3 week, but unfortunately, you have to look at everything in context right now. And a 3-3 week for the Cubs, when the Brewers are going 5-1, is still problematic, isn't it?
Well, the Brewers were going 14 in a row and then lost one.
Right.
We do have a guest to bring on to help us learn a little bit more about the Milwaukee Brewers, as it will be incredibly important as we look ahead to the games next week. 5 games against Milwaukee to help us understand our enemies, to learn more about the opponents. You know him from his work at Milwaukee's Tailgate Podcast. Ryan Topp, thanks for coming on the Wrigleyville Nation podcast today.
Yeah, great to be here. Looking forward to it and excited to talk about the Brewers. I've doing a lot of guest appearances lately, so it's been fun.
Yeah, watching the Brewers refuse to lose ever has been incredibly frustrating, as Cubs fans are watching the lead grow ever so much. Before we get into the Cubs week, just want to touch quickly on the Brewers month success period here. What the heck is going on? Why do I now know who some of these players are? What is happening in Milwaukee? How come they can't lose?
Well, yeah, it's sort of everything that can go right is going right, though they got off to a very slow start. I mean, they were 3-4 games under 500 in the middle of May, and then everything sort of turned around at that point. And then they got an additional boost towards the end of June. I forget that it must have been like around July 4th that Brandon Woodruff came back. And since that point, they've basically been almost unstoppable. We recorded this morning and was looking up some numbers. So yeah, they won these 14 in a row before losing today to the Reds, like you mentioned, but that was actually 22 of 26 because they also had an 11-game winning streak that kind of started that out. And if you go all the way back to June 19th, now it's 39 of, I guess now 49 now that they lost today. So it's been an extended run, unlike this is by far the best run the Brewers have had in their franchise history. And we were kind of talking about it in comparison to I don't know the exact number, but like the Giants in 1951 had a run where they tracked down Brooklyn, and everybody kind of knows that as like the Brooklyn collapse. But it really was just the Giants over the last, they were like 43 and like 8 or something over their last, over the last like 51 games or something. Just did not lose, just went on an insane run. And so kind of think of runs like that. This isn't just like the hottest stretch of any team this year. This is one of those, you don't see much of this. This doesn't happen every year that any team gets this hot. So
it reminds me a little bit of that Rockies run in September of, I don't know, 10 or 11 years ago when they went to the World Series, where they just wouldn't lose in the month of September.
Yeah.
I think, was it the 35 Cubs who had a similar streak to close out the year in September? Reminds me a lot of that too.
Does it? Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is the 90th year anniversary of that, so
yeah, I definitely wasn't around for the 51 thing, but that's sort of a.
you missed a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, the shot heard around the world and everything. But yeah, this has been, and it's been a lot of different things sort of coming together, and a mixture of unexpected and a lot of players just sort of hitting very high in their potential highest end outcomes. But I should also point out that like this winning streak that they had snapped today basically started with the injury to Jackson Chourio in that last series against the Cubs in Milwaukee. Right. And so they've been doing this that entire run was without Jackson Chourio.
Wasn't he and Rhys Hoskins both have been out, right? And meanwhile, like Andrew Vaughn, who was hitting, I think, about 069 or something for the White Sox, had been sent to the minors. I think you found him like hitchhiking on the road or something and picked him up and brought him back to Milwaukee. And he's got 1.3 WAR in the last 30 games, even though none of it's from defense. So congratulations on his 1,000 on base plus slugging percentage.
Yeah, 330, 395, 624, which is a 1.019 OPS, 183 OPS plus coming into play on Sunday. And yeah, it's a very funny situation because Aaron Savale got bumped from the starting rotation for Jacob Mizorowski. And Savale is a pending free agent and wanted to pitch in the rotation for somebody. And he very politely requested a trade. And the Brewers turned around and said, okay, we'll do that. And within 24 hours, they were trading him to the White Sox for Andrew Vaughn. And I was quite excited because I had actually been looking at Vaughn a little bit after he'd been sent down by the White Sox. And I saw some pretty good StatCast power numbers that he had been putting up. But he just had this problem where he swung at everything and just couldn't lay off a pitch outside the strike zone to save his life. And apparently when he showed up with the Brewers, the first thing he was told, and this has been reported widely now, like the first thing he was told was, hey, you got to stop swinging at pitches outside the strike zone or you're just not going to play. And
it's odd that, I mean, if you told me an organization never told a player that news, I would be skeptical. But the White Sox, I wouldn't put it past them for missing that one.
Yeah, that has been Paul Noonan, who's my partner on the podcast. He's made that point over and over. It's like always go after the bad teams. Yes. Isaac Collins, who's also having this huge breakout for the Brewers this year, we got him from the Rockies. So they just have this habit of going and finding players on these teams that they're not getting the most out of these players, and they bring them in and. Like the Andrew Vaughn thing is almost like it's the one weird trick. Like I compare it to the Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns tells Darryl Strawberry, "Go hit a home run, Strawberry," and he goes, "Okay, Skip," and then just goes and does it. And that's kind of been what Andrew Vaughn has done. It's been a remarkable turnaround, and he really does not swing at pitches outside the strike zone nearly as much as he was before. And so he's turned into kind of a stealth. I mean, he won't win the MVP obviously because he's been doing it for too short and he's a first baseman and whatever, but like he's basically putting up MVP numbers over the last month and a half here. And you could kind of see it. He was the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And because of the fact the White Sox sent him down, he won't get a full year of service time this year, which means the Brewers can bring him back, not just for next year, but for 2 years before he's a free agent. So
is it possible though, and I mean this in all seriousness, that he traded like bodies with Kyle Tucker or something? Like, is there like,
does that coincide with Tucker's downturn?
I can't help but notice there's this cause and effect here.
Well, you like to go after talented guys. You know, he was the 3rd overall pick in the draft for a reason, and there's a reason that they took him that high. And
yeah, so was Nick Madrigal. We tried that experiment, so it doesn't always.
But he showed, and Vaughn had actually shown things at various points in his career, but just had been on this downward trajectory. I think as the White Sox spiraled out of control into terribleness, I think he just kind of went along with it. And sometimes just a change of scenery, going to an organization where it's like, yeah, there's an opportunity here if you turn things around and start doing things better. And he's stepped up. So it's certainly nothing we could have counted on, but also not something that's completely unfathomable because the guy's talented. It took him a little while to figure out how to make that work.
The Brewers will play Toronto at the end of August on the 29th, 30th, and 31st. The Cubs played them this week, and we predicted that best case is to get one against a tough team in the Blue Jays. And the way the Cubs offense has the lack of production, every run is a struggle. The return of Javier Assad was encouraging. We need another pitcher. We saw Assad
actually
pitch.
The return was not encouraging, but the
him being in
return
attendance was yes, exactly. However, yeah, he is giving up runs meant that the Cubs were in trouble because they could only muster 6 total runs in the series.
Yeah, they're lucky they won a game, frankly.
Yeah, only one in that Assad game. They got 1 run in that Assad game, but thank goodness for Cade Horton the next game pitching. I have a lot of friends and colleagues in Toronto, and it was they saw Cade Horton for the first time, and they're like, "Wow, this guy's really something." And I'm like, "Yeah, he really is. Sure would be great if he could pitch into October, but he will exceed his innings pitched lifetime here coming up." And so yeah, it's unfortunate. So people were impressed with the Cade Horton showing. Only 1 hit, 8 strikeouts. It was a big win for the Cubs there to get 1 before dropping the finale 2-1. Again, the offense continues to struggle. Pat, your thoughts on the Brewers series, on the Blue Jay series?
I mean, the Blue Jays are one of the best teams in the American League. So we talked about how, they were just very good. I don't know. I think that the Cubs at this point of the season, winning 1 out of 3 at Toronto would have been probably acceptable, especially because they were all close games. They were all sort of playoff types of games, except for if you actually watch them and then you're like, no, that wasn't a playoff team at all. But score-wise, they were. The problem was the Brewers won 3 in a row, so the Cubs lost 2 games in the standings, and at a time when they could ill afford to do so, right? So I think you look at things in the context of where we're at, and the Cubs have been playing 500 baseball since June 1st, so it's time that they actually start winning some series more often than they lose them, and that was not a great start to the week.
Kyle Tucker has not hit a home run since July 19th. And
he's only hit 1 since like June 28th or something, right?
Right, and made news with some of his post-game comments about how it doesn't matter if he's hitting home runs as long as the Cubs are winning. However, neither of those things are true. No.
Yeah. So since he stopped hitting home runs, the Cubs stopped winning, which is I don't know what the correlation is. I mean, since he stopped hitting home runs in the body of Kyle Tucker and started hitting him in the body of Andrew Vaughn,
right?
The Cubs have stopped winning. So yeah.
So someone needs to remind him.
But you know what? If he is hurt, I'm sorry. It really frustrates me when we hear, well, so and so was hurt the whole second half of the year. That's why they hit 180. It's like, okay, well then they shouldn't be playing if they're that beat up, right? So
agreed.
If he's too hurt to perform well, then he should rest and get better. If he is able to perform and is not injured, and that's not the reason why he hasn't hit more than 1 home run in the last 7 weeks, then that's another issue.
Yes, someone has to remind him that you are the star player of this team. So it does matter when you hit home runs because this team's offense looks completely different when you're not. And when we're relying on Bush and Shaw to provide all the power, real trouble here. We need to see more from Kyle Tucker in a big way. And I get nervous when we talk about these slumps that everyone's just like, they're just in a prolonged offensive slump and they'll get out of it. But I've seen too often where they haven't, and it just goes the entire time. And then we hear, I remember the 2018 when Theo's saying the offense was broken. And it's like, nobody did anything to try to fix it. And just I think hope is their strategy, which is not correct. I'd like to see some signs of life from the offense. Otherwise, this is going to be you run into a series against Pittsburgh as they rolled into, and the offense continues to be a struggle, and you're watching them try to claw and scratch across runs against a Pittsburgh team that doesn't have these weren't their best pitchers. Paul Skeens wasn't out there, Pat.
Neither was Keller. I mean, it was literally the three bad pitchers on a team that's one of the worst teams in baseball. So that's only kept afloat by the two good pitchers on their team, frankly. Their lineup's not impressive. There's nothing impressive about the Pirates. The fact that they won the first game and were in a position to win the second game, and even the third game, was very disconcerting. Within a matter of about 20 minutes today, I honestly thought we were going to come into this podcast tonight 10 games out of first place, because the Brewers had just taken the lead in the top of the ninth against the Reds, and that's a tired old story about coming back and winning. And the Cubs had just blown the lead. I think it was like in the sixth inning, maybe. Ben Brown was not looking particularly strong. There were men on base, and then the Cubs turned it around and got out of that and took the lead, and somehow the Reds found a way to beat the Brewers. And so the Cubs averted complete disaster, being 10 back going into this 5-game series, and now we're only 8 back. So I guess thank goodness for small favors, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, we saw they keep getting impressive starts out of Colin Ray on this stretch. We know that will change. We've seen what happens when the pendulum swings the other direction. But Colin Ray's he pitched in the losing effort, but pitched well. It's just today. This would have been a different tone of a podcast if the Cubs had not pulled out the victory today.
And when you look back since the Jameson Taillon injury, and rumor is he might start tomorrow against the Brewers after having not pitched since the end of June. The Cubs have been fortunate in the last 6 or 7 weeks where they've only had to use a fifth starter on 7 occasions, because they've had a lot of days off and the All-Star break, and they've been able to configure their rotation accordingly. And that's been a huge break, because when they have had to use a fifth starter, they're 1-6. And oftentimes those games spiral out of control early. We've had pitchers have to leave after an inning or two, and it just hasn't been good for the Cubs. So getting Taillon back, hopefully, and maybe Assad can move to the bullpen. Maybe Colin Ray as the fifth starter on this team will seem like a more palatable choice than making him our fourth starter. At one point in the season, he was our third starter. So,
Ryan, Colin Ray is your third starter, not something the Brewers wanted to do anymore.
Yeah, I mean they were able to get a lot out of Colin Ray while they had him. Part of it was always just having great defense, and the Cubs have that too. So the strength of the defense does help that. But there was always a limited ceiling with Colin Ray. We were happy to get what we could out of him while we could get it. There was some head shaking and some head scratching, I guess, that they let him go this winter. People, the standard call is just that, ownership is cheap. They didn't want to bring him back and spend the money for a sure thing guy. And then it turned out that they actually had like 10 starters and nobody realized it. So, and none of us realized it even in, early April when they were scrambling and everybody was hurt. And it was just, things seemed to be collapsing around their heads. But the thing they do is just, they always seem to be able to develop up pitching. And that's been the reason why they've been on this run they've been on now for going on a decade, I guess.
Must be nice.
I actually went to Milwaukee to a Brewers Cardinals game. I think it might have been, I don't know, like end of May or something, like maybe it was June, early June. Anyway, I remember going up there and rooted for the Brewers because I said, well, first of all, it's at Milwaukee and I dislike the Cardinals immensely. So I'm like, I don't have an issue with that. But also I thought, well, strategically speaking, this is probably the good choice too, because the Brewers don't stand much of a chance this year. And this seemed like a good idea. And that was before you brought up Kerry Wood Jr. From the minors, and and things turned around with Andrew Vaughn and others. So I feel like I might have jinxed us, Jeremy, but I have this habit of declaring teams dead too soon in the season, and then they come back and they end up on top of us. So my bad.
Yeah, we did mention Javier Assad. He came back for the Sunday game with another pitching performance this week. This time, 4 innings pitched, gave up 5 hits, an earned run, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. Better. Still not great. Still a lot of we still got a lot more Ben Brown than we wanted to in this game. But good news that they were able to pull it out, and that brings us to our standings as of the time of this recording on a Sunday night, August 17th. The Brewers 8 games ahead of the Cubs in the division. The Cubs are the top wild card team. And the Padres are just 2.5 back of the Cubs for that top spot. That is where
Which is an improvement because they've lost 3 in a row and the Cubs have won 2 in a row. At one point, I think we were tied or almost tied.
Yes, it was getting scary there. We've talked about it. If we're now going to be focused on the wild card, we have to remember that the top wild card spot is most important. As we know, all of the wild card games are random. It doesn't matter. It's whatever is going to happen is going to happen. It's all completely nuts and random. But being able to do it at home,
that's better.
Gives you the best odds probably of all the randomness.
It's going to be hard for the Cubs to drop completely out of the wild card this year because they have 3 of them, and the Cubs are in the first position. And in order to drop out, we would need to be passed up by the Padres and the Mets, who have been flailing worse than us, and also the Reds, who just lost 2 out of 3 to the Brewers. So I don't know, silver lining. So it is going to be tricky to do that. But before we give up on the division, just keep in mind the Cubs have a 5-game series against Milwaukee. If the Cubs were to win 4 out of 5, I know, crazy talk, they would be 5 games out, but they would also clinch the tiebreaker. So they'd be the equivalent of 4 games out, right, in some respects. So that would be from the fear of being 10 games out about 3 hours ago. That would be, not insurmountable. We saw the 2018, I think, Brewers come back from about 6 back at the Labor Day after the Anthony Rizzo homer off Hader, and then the Cubs blew it in the bottom of the ninth. I don't want to recall that again, but anyway, and they tied at the end. But back then, in those days, you had the 1-game play-in. This year, you would not. So, if the Cubs were to win 3 out of 5, the 2 teams would be tied in head-to-head this year. And if that's the case, it goes to divisional record. At which point, the Brewers, I think, still have a lead right now. But if the Cubs won 3 out of 5, it'd be like a 1-game lead. It wouldn't be much, right? So then the divisional records for the rest of the year would matter. If the Cubs win 4 or more, then they clinch. And if somehow the Brewers were to go 3-2, I think from their standpoint, and Ryan, I'm interested to hear yours. Right? To me, I'm a Brewers fan. I'm like, gee, if we just win 3 out of 5, we got this thing pretty locked in because we get the head-to-head. We're 9 games up with 34 games to go. I mean, that's pretty close to insurmountable.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think the talk among Brewer fans has been don't get swept because
that'd be even better. I didn't even think about that.
We didn't even think about that one.
Isn't it funny how the fan bases always think of the worst case scenario, and the other team you're playing doesn't even consider that as an option?
Yeah, basically don't get swept because then, like you said, that's the Cubs taking 4 out of 5 and be looking at a 4-game lead at that point, which functionally would be 3 because the Cubs would have the tiebreak at that point. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, basically the Brewers can end any sort of division race, but with any sort of, I think, series win here, basically if they go 3-2, I think it essentially wraps things up. It's already going to be a tough hill for the Cubs to climb. They're going to have to get hot and play way better than they have been. And the Brewers are going to have to, pretty well. Yeah, well, they're going to have to pretty well melt down. I mean, they're going to have to be legitimately bad, which for a team that has the starting pitching depth that they have, it's generally been my experience. It's hard to have a complete meltdown when you have the starting pitching depth.
But couldn't you just play 500 the rest of the year after this series? I mean, we might be able to catch you if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that probably that should be coming at some point, right? Like this team has been somewhat over their heads in terms of like what you would expect them to be doing. They have a great run differential, so they're outscoring. They have the best run differential in baseball. But if you look at some of the second order stuff, the base runs over on Fangraphs, they have the Brewers as being, maybe 5 wins better than what you would sort of expect based on the underlying metrics. But there's also the thing that the Brewers sort of build to get lucky, if that makes sense. Like the way they build their offense is sort of to put pressure on teams and to constantly be basically a huge pain in the butt to anybody they're playing, where you have to execute. They're going to take an extra base. They're going to get on base with infield singles and all of those things. So you really have to come in and execute against them, or they're going to make your life miserable, because that's just sort of how they're built to play. And so it gives them a little bit of runway to both be to get a little bit lucky in those cases. So they're, like you say, they're about 5 wins better than I think you'd expect based on.
I mean, they've won 24 out of 29. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, and that's just not normal. That's not. Yeah, and some of that is just like them making up for. I think they were not as bad a team, through the first 6 weeks as what their record was. They were a better team underlying than that. We were skeptical, but we weren't really sure. You weren't really quite sure what you were looking at with the team, because they had so many people who were hurt and there was such a flux of the roster. But then it started to crystallize. You could see it starting in late May. Things started to come together. But yeah, I mean, this kind of a run where you go on an insanely hot streak like this and just don't lose, that's not normal. That's like the normal state of baseball. Teams aren't generally that good, right?
No, the 27 Yankees would dream about a stretch that good.
Again, can't claim to have been around for that one.
Oh, you should have seen it.
Yeah, it's funny to see the Brewers having this happen while the Mets, who we're watching on the wild card side, over their last 20 games go 6-14. Just unbelievable. They are right there. The Cincinnati Reds are only a game behind the Mets now to get into the wild card, which is to get into that third wild card spot, which is unthinkable just a couple weeks ago.
The sad part is, Tom Ricketts is sitting there saying, "See, I'm glad we didn't get that Juan Soto. Look what that means." Soto's having a fine year, by the way, so it's not his fault. But yeah, it is interesting this year that it seems like, when I think of, obviously the Brewers have had this hot stretch, but conventional wisdom was, well, the Dodgers are going to be really good, the Phillies will be good, and the Padres will probably be good coming into the year, and the Cubs should be pretty decent. But the Mets were the other team that was in that equation, and the Braves were in that equation, and they've been terrible. Arizona has been really bad. And so when you start looking at the bottom of the wild card, it's almost humorous to think that the team like the Reds could make it. The Reds could be a really scary team to play in a 3-game series, because Chris Peters is a great rookie pitcher, although he's injured right now. But that Abbott kid is no joke, man. He's the real thing. And all of a sudden you look at their rotation and you're like, wow, they could beat you game 1, game 2, and then you're done. Your season is over, right? Elly De La Cruz could get hit by a pitch, reach base on an error, and get an infield single and steal 8 bases. And next thing you know, you've lost the game to a team that you felt like you should have beaten.
Yeah, the Reds are a tricky one, and it's been very different. You would have thought coming into the season that they'd be doing it with offense, and you kind of wondered about where the pitching was going to be, and it's been exactly the opposite. The pitching has been stalwart for them, has been really, really good, and the offense has been pretty bad outside of a few guys kind of at the top of that lineup. They have lineup depth issues, and so it's not playing out the way you would expect. But we talked on our podcast before the season about, I was worried about the Reds and just kind of the Tito Francona of it all. Like, is he going to be the catalyst to come in and get them to start playing winning baseball and to sort of get them on the right track? Because that's just sort of what he does throughout his career. And why
waste his time in Cincinnati? He could do it somewhere more important. in the American League.
Somewhere more important.
Yeah,
looking.
I'm a little bit concerned as we move forward for this year and next year. I start to see that the Reds and the Pirates have these rotations that are crystallizing, and right now neither team is hitting particularly well, but I think the Reds have a chance of being better hitting team moving forward in the next year and thereafter, and maybe even spending money. Not sure if the Pirates will ever do that. But and then the Brewers pitching, and when you look at the prospect rankings for teams, it's pretty depressing to see that it's like you look at the Cubs, and for all the prospect hugging the Cubs have done, they've done a lot. They're really not that good at it because we've I guess graduated a couple players this year, but the Reds and the Brewers and the Pirates are all in the top 10 in farm system rankings right now. Like they're all considered very good, and so they're not going away in terms of more young players coming up, and that's it's almost like the Cubs as a big market team get penalized because they don't get the extra draft picks and the extra money for the international free agency and for the draft. It's almost like they would almost have to spend money because they make all this extra money by being a big market team through free agency, et cetera, in order to take advantage of that. And maybe they don't understand that's how it works. But I am concerned about the improvements that I see in those teams on the horizon.
Yeah, the NL Central is better than most people realize at this point. I think that this is it kind of gets lumped in with the AL Central as being, the poor sisters of the Central Division, where there's, the big coastal teams and whatever. But look at the records in the division. The Pirates are a bad team. Everybody else is. The Cardinals are just a little bit under 500. Reds are just a little bit over 500. Brewers and Cubs are two of the best teams in baseball. Like, it may not feel like that at the moment because the extended run of, sort of middlingness that the Cubs are on, but the Cubs have one of the best records in baseball. You look at it, they're just behind the Dodgers, and what is it, right even with the Phillies, or just right behind the Phillies too. They're one of the best teams in baseball. And so when you have two of the best teams in baseball up at the top of the division, a couple of middling teams in the Reds and Cardinals, and then only the Pirates are truly bad, that's one of the best divisions in baseball. It's not the AL East of a few years ago where everybody was really, really good, but it's pretty tough. And I really feel for Pirates fans. I've sort of long held a little soft spot in my heart for the Pirates because it's just, they're trying to roll that rock up the hill year after year after year. You have just terrible ownership, just the worst ownership.
The worst.
Yeah. And it's just,
I blame them for rolling the rock. They should just not even bother. Who's their last big free agent signing? Xavier Nandy or something? I mean, it's like really bad.
Yeah, I saw a thing about if you look at their contracts, it's some ridiculous thing. The largest contract they've ever signed was like, it had to have been McCutchen, right? Like that going back.
Yeah, Brian Reynolds, maybe his extension. I'm not sure.
Maybe Brian Reynolds, but yeah, it's been some extensions that they've done, but really nothing in the free agent market. Nothing, big fat nothing.
By the way, the Cubs are half a game behind the Dodgers and Phillies. So, by the end of Monday, the Cubs could have the second best record in the National League and still be like 8 games out of first place. So, just saying.
Yeah, the Brewers have been that hot.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the 5 games on this homestand against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Monday afternoon is a makeup from June. It is a doubleheader, 1:20 game and a 7:05. We know that the pitchers for Game 1 of the doubleheader will be Freddie Peralta and Cade Horton. So Game 2, TBDs all around, and it looks like probables for Woodruff and Mizorowski to close out the series. TBDs on the side of the Cubs. Jamison Tyone is being rumored, Pat, to make an appearance here.
I'm telling you, we'll see what he does, and if he in fact does come back for the first time in 7 weeks, and we'll see which way the wind is blowing, literally and figuratively. But I don't know, Ryan, but you, I think I have said on your podcast and on others that I think that the Brewers starting rotation is a great strength of theirs. They've got 6 legitimate starters at any one time, if not more. And so this is tailor-made for them in that regard. However, the way things are kind of lining up and the lack of the need for a 5th starter for the Cubs, hopefully, and with Taillon coming back, I don't think these pitching matchups are as bad for the Cubs as I had maybe imagined they might be a while ago. Like, I think the Cubs could be competitive in these games. I have a lot of confidence in Boyd and Imanaga and even Horton, although he's probably due for a little bit of regression. But they've all been pitching so well. And even, as you pointed out, Jeremy Colin Ray's been all right. I don't think that the Cubs are necessarily going to be completely outclassed in terms of the starting pitching. Whether or not our middle relief can hold up or not, and whether or not that will translate into wins, different stories, I suppose. But I look at those starters and I'm like, well, I bet the Cubs could potentially eke out 3 wins in this. I mean, it can go a lot of different ways, but I don't feel terribly pessimistic like I might have a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Ryan, looking at the matchups here, is there any Cubs pitcher that the Brewers are not looking forward to facing?
I don't know. I mean, Boyd is pitching which day? Is that already been settled?
Tuesday.
Okay. So it's going to be Boyd against Woodruff. That's a good matchup. That's obviously a tough one.
It's a coin flip, really, I think.
Yeah, it is. And Tuesdays, it's going to be interesting. So just a little heads up on what the Brewers' status is with their bullpen. They had to burn through their entire A bullpen on both Friday and Saturday to get those wins. So to beat the Reds in those games, McGill, Uribe, Koenig, Ashby, Mears all pitched in both of those games.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. They all took the day off today. That was a big part of why there's some controversy about how Pat Murphy handled things, but they basically had their entire A bullpen shelved today. But what that means is chances are good they're going to have to run through all of those guys at some point on Monday. And if they've done that, that's going to put them in a position again on Tuesday where all of their A bullpen will have probably pitched 3 out of 4 days. And the way the Brewers tend to run things is they shelve anybody who's gone 2 straight days, and they shelve anybody who's gone 3 out of 4. And they definitely try to stay away from them. So Tuesday could kind of be a sneaky day if the bullpen stuff plays out the right way for you guys. Tuesday could be a sneaky day where the Brewers are really trying to get by with Shelby Miller, Grant Anderson, Tobias Myers, or whoever they've brought up, because they're going to have to do some shuffling here to kind of get through.
Shelby Miller, I think, maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
What about Monday afternoon with the second game of the doubleheader?
That's going to be Chad Patrick. I would bet money on that. Okay. Yeah, it hasn't been stated yet. I think they're leaving it open, but Chad Patrick has he was the guy who got bumped when who came back? Maybe it was Quintana came back, and he obviously has had a really good season. The Brewers wouldn't be where they are without Chad Patrick stabilizing the rotation for them through the April and May time period. And he was a good pitcher. He actually was the AAA pitcher of the year last year, but he was not really a prospect, not a guy that we were really counting on much of anything. It was more this guy has some rotation depth, and if he has to come up, that would be fine. But 3.52 ERA over 94 innings, and just really, like I said, stabilized, striking out a batter per inning, basically just really stabilized things for them. And they've had so much starting rotation depth that they just haven't had a spot for him. So he has been sitting in AAA waiting for an opportunity, and I think that opportunity is coming for him on Monday night. So it'll be interesting to see him back. I think a lot of people are happy for him to get a chance, because fans kind of feel like he got done dirty a little bit, even though we understand that he is like the 6th or 7th best pitcher that they have. So he's going to get pushed out, but he hasn't done anything to really deserve to be in AAA. There's too many starters.
Well, then you hope the Cubs can rock him, and then you won't feel as bad about him being in AAA. Everybody comes out a winner.
Right. You would assuage our guilt. Yeah, that's. But yeah, we'll see that. The bullpen situation is going to be interesting to monitor, because they definitely need long starts tomorrow from Freddie Peralta and from presumably Chad Patrick, because if one of those guys goes short, if the Cubs offense gets it going and kicks it into high gear, they could put the Brewers into a bit of a corner bullpen wise for the rest of the series. So it's going to be tough. I kind of wish that this doubleheader was scheduled later in the series. I get why you don't, because you have to deal with weather and you want to give yourself the chance if something does get rained out. And I saw, as is tradition for the Brewers playing in Chicago these days, there's a chance of rain tomorrow. It's not,
Sure is,
but it's there. So last I saw, everything was kind of hovering in like around 30% by the hour by hour. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because nobody needs that. Though actually the Brewers really could use the bullpen getting a day would be not terrible for them. But then we're going to have to cram these games in. Like then they're just going to have to play 2 doubleheaders in 3 days. So that would also be a nightmare.
Well, let's do our predictions, as we are very good at predicting the week that will be.
although we were off by a game last week, sadly.
We were too optimistic, so let's take a look at the week ahead. 8 games, 5 against the Brewers, then 3 at the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim here, going to Anaheim to play 3 games. Pat, we'll start with you. For the 8 games, what is your prediction?
Yeah, this is going to be one of those, could be a very frustrating week. I think the Cubs could play well and get up for the Brewer series. I really do. But then I worry about the Angel series. That's a classic letdown situation. They'll be on the West Coast. The Cubs pitching in that series will be comprised of, I don't know, what is it, Assad? I guess Assad, Horton, and Boyd. So it's not as bad as it could be. But
no, the Angels are bad too. They're a bad team.
I could easily see the Cubs somehow dropping 2 out of 3 and being very frustrated with that. That's a team that you should win 2 out of 3 against. We just haven't been doing that lately. And going from a Thursday game to a Friday game on the West Coast is always frustratingly difficult for whatever reasons, time change and fatigue. You don't want that emotional letdown after playing in front of a packed stadium for 5 games against your rival, etc. So I am going to say the Cubs win 3 out of 5 against the Brewers and then lose 2 out of 3 and end up the week with a somewhat unsatisfying 4-3 record.
Can't be 4-3. We need one more.
Well, wait, 3-2, 1-2. Yeah, I can. 4-3.
There's
No.
8 games.
Yes, they're right.
5
You're
against
right.
the Brewers. 3
Oh gosh, that's even worse. It's 4-4, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, 4-4. Okay. Sorry.
That's fine, because
I wish it could be 4-3.
Yes, I think that it'll be 5-3, because I see that I see them splitting the doubleheader as all doubleheaders seem to go. We always seem to split those. So I think 3-2 for the Cubs against the Brewers, and then taking 2 of 3 against Anaheim for a 5-3 week. Ryan, I'll let you make a prediction as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would take that 5-3 at this point. Like that would be, I would accept that if I was given that versus the mystery box. I think I might even take that, just because that's not going to result in a huge gaining of ground by the Cubs. It'll gain some ground, but it's not going to be a huge gain. My guess is the series. I'd say the Cubs probably win the series like 3-2 would be my guess for that series. The Angels, I think the Angels have been better this year than I was expecting, but also have they been bad since the deadline? I don't know. They had been like kind of hovering around 500 for a while. But
is 4 under, you know.
They're 4 under. They're 5-5 in their last 10 and 4 under 500.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that. And those, do you guys have problems on the West Coast like the Brewers always do?
We do.
Yeah. I think that's just a baseball thing in general. Teams coming from a couple time zones over tend to just struggle in general. So yeah, I mean, I could certainly see that. I would definitely, if the Cubs came out of this week 4-4, I would be pretty happy about it. That would make me happy. I don't know, even the Brewers at this point, where are they going after the series? I haven't even looked yet.
You play the Giants, I believe, at home.
Oh, it's that's Bob Uecker weekend. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So you're going to be up for that.
Yeah, it's Bob Uecker weekend. They're doing a celebration of life. So they're going to start early on Sunday before that game against the Giants. And then there's a Bob Uecker umbrella giveaway, I think, on Saturday. So it's Bob Uecker weekend coming up, and they probably will get up for that. That would be there's a lot of players who are very tight with him. Christian Yelich, especially, was very, very tight with Bob. So
I like Bob, for God's sake. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
Who doesn't?
look,
Yeah.
there's a chance Cubs could win 3 out of 5, and both teams could take 2 out of 3 after that. And for the week, the Brewers might end up 4-4 or whatever, and the Cubs might end up 5-3 or something, or vice versa. I mean, I think from a Brewers standpoint, those are all perfectly acceptable outcomes because at this point you're just taking games off the calendar. I mean, you get 34 games left after this.
That's amazing just to think about it for everyone listening. Only
80% of the
games.
season will be basically over with.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, the other thing is the Cubs just need this series against the Brewers a lot more than the Brewers need this series against them. Like it's important for both teams, but the Cubs, if they want to have any chance of getting back into the division race, they need to at least win the series, probably win 4, really realistically, probably win 5 to really, get things going. But yeah,
look, the way regression works in baseball, the old expression, you win 50, you lose 50, what you do with the 60 in the middle, or you win 60, you lose 60, what you do with the 50 in the middle, I guess, or whatever it is, the 30 in the middle, this decides, determines your season. I think it's 60, 60, and 30, 40, 60, 60, and 40. You win 60, you lose 40, and what you do with the other 40 is what determines your outcome.
Yeah.
And that's proved last year that that's not necessarily the case. But as a general rule, it kind of is, right? Like, losing 100 games, winning 100 games, that's outlier type stuff, right? Winning 24 out of 29 is an outlier thing. The Brewers could be a better talented team. They could actually outplay the Cubs and still find themselves losing 3 out of 5 or even 4 out of 5, given, just the way baseball is a weird game like that. That's why, the Dodgers and the Yankees in their primes could lose 2 out of 3 to the Marlins. It happens. It happens every year. It happens every month, right? It's just weird stuff like that happens because baseball is not meant to be decided over short intervals. That's why we have 5 rounds of playoffs now, I suppose. But just to mix up the, as you said, Jeremy, the randomness of it. But yeah, it's just almost like, people say, oh, you don't want to play them while they're hot. I'm like, actually, I prefer to play teams when they're red hot because that usually means that they're not going to be red hot forever. And I'd rather play you now than had you lost, say, 4 in a row after that hot winning streak, because it would feel like you were back. There'd be some settling going on there.
Yeah, it really is a matter of, I think it's they always talk about it being 50-50, and the argument is over the 60 games in the middle.
Okay.
And so, that's very much the truth. And the other thing that I always try to remind people, been doing this for a while now, the podcast thing, is try to remind people that, like, even the best teams in baseball are going to have a bad month where they're, a few games under 500 generally. Like, and the
2016 Cubs, greatest team in the history of baseball, had a rough stretch there around the All-Star break in 2016.
Yep, I remember it. Yep, and everybody was freaking out and going, "Oh, is this the end? Is this is it all falling apart here?" And it was like, well, no, it actually was just fine. That was just the cold month. And you hope that it doesn't happen when you get to October, which has been the case for the Brewers for quite a while now. They have this run where they've been getting into the playoffs every year, and then they get to October, and some weird stuff happens basically since 2018. Everything goes wrong when they get to October. And so that's,
when in the playoffs, they beat the Angels at one time, right? In 82. 82, yeah. So not always.
They went to the NLCS in 2011 and got beat by the Red Hot Cards, that was the Happy Flight Cards, who just
was that the Cardinals team finished 500 in the regular season or something.
Yeah, they were. Well, I think they ended up getting to 90, but the Brewers ran away with the division. And then the 2018 team, obviously, that was the Brewers caught the Cubs on the last day, and then we had the one-game playoff game 163 at Wrigley, which still lives in lore.
I know. I hear it from Milwaukee people all the time.
Well, there's that one, and there's also game 162 in 2008, which broke the 26-year playoff drought with CeCe Sabathia going complete game, and that was against the Cubs team that had already wrapped things up a long time ago and didn't really care.
Yeah, so, in fact, I don't even remember that game. That's how funny it is. The Cubs won like 98 games that year or something, had the best record in baseball, and no one cared at all about what happened in that particular contest. We were just waiting to get swept by the Dodgers in the playoffs. That was our focus.
Well, I will never forget walking out of the stadium. I was at all the every game that last week in 2008. And on that Saturday, the Brewers had won a bunch of games in a row, and then they lost on Saturday. And walking out of that game, some Cub fan was waving their huge, they had one of the giant W flags and was like snapping it at people as they were walking through the tunnel on the way out of the stadium. And I was very mad and just very annoyed. And I was walking in front of my friend, and the guy like snapped the thing in my face, and my friend sees me start to walk, and he's like grabs the collar of my shirt and pulls me back and goes, no, we're coming to the game tomorrow.
Well, you get your revenge on him. Wasn't he, that guy probably broke both his legs on the escalator when you stopped at mid-flight a couple years ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah, those escalator, that issue, they had that escalator closed. That was the escalator we usually take up to our season seats, and that was closed for weeks afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah, because of the liability and all the lawsuits they had to deal with.
Yeah, there were lots of
death trap.
Yeah, there were lots of jokes made in Milwaukee about the fact that the people, the personal injury lawyers were going to have a field day with that one. I'm sure it worked out that way.
Well, Ryan, the way we close our show every week is by doing our Cubs player profile. As the guest this week, you get to choose who we profile next week. Can you pick someone from Cubs past for us to profile?
Yeah, I'll do a player that is in common with both teams. And I was telling you guys a story before we started here about this Jeremy Burnitz was a player for the Brewers in the late 90s and early aughts. And then he came over to the Cubs for at least a couple of years there. And I remember going to a game at Wrigley where it was Ben Sheets against Carlos Zambrano. And this would have been in 2005. And the Cubs won on a Jeremy Burnitz solo home run into the teeth of just a nasty, biting Wrigley wind blowing in off the lake. And that was the only score in the game. And it was a miserable afternoon. Everything about it was terrible. And so I vividly remember being at that game with my friend Steve. And yeah, so I will give you guys Jeremy Burnitz for next week to talk about.
A classic former Brewer Cub type of player.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, looking forward to it, and we'll preview. We'll do a profile here shortly on Ted Lilly, but before we do, Ryan, we'll let you go. Can you please let our listeners know where they can find your work and how they can listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so we are Milwaukee's Tailgate, and we are just about to celebrate our 400th episode. We've been doing this since 2017. We've had a few cast changes over the years. I've been there the whole time, but had a few different people come in. But Paul and James have been with me for quite a while now. We often get a contribution from Spencer Michaelis as well, often when Paul's not available because he also does a Packers podcast, which is Reporting as Eligible. That's our sister Packers podcast. So, yeah, we love doing that, and Paul and I are actually going to be on Wisconsin Public Radio this week talking about the Brewers. We pop in and talk every once in a while with Larry Mueller, who does a show on Wisconsin Public Radio. So we love doing that, and we're looking forward to doing that on Tuesday. So,
of course, Paul is well known on this podcast too, Ryan. He's been on, I think, for the last 12 or 13 years. So.
Yeah, okay. We've had Paul for a long time. Yep. So definitely glad to have you in the rotation now as well. Appreciate you taking time out to talk Cubs and Brewers with us. Thanks again, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks very much.
All right, Pat, tell us about Ted Lilly.
Theodore Lilly, born on January 4th of 1976, the bicentennial year of this nation. He's currently 49 years old. Feels like he should be older. Born in Lomita, California. Drafted in the 13th round by the Blue Jays in 1995. This is sort of symbolic of his career. He decided to stay in school and see if he could improve his draft position. In the following year, 1996, he was drafted by the Dodgers 23rd round. So he went from the 13th round to the 23rd round. That was the 23rd round in the 96 draft. You probably remember that draft. That was the year the Cubs made the much remembered, coveted draft pick with the 17th pick in the first round. They took Todd Noel.
Of course.
Cub legend. 2 years in the minors, Lilly was traded to the Montreal Expos in a trade that brought back Mark Ruzelanic and Carlos Perez. So some names that are familiar to people. He made his debut for the Expos in May of 1999. And then after pitching in a couple games that offseason, was traded to New York Yankees as part of a package for Hideki Arabu, another person people probably remember. With the Yankees, he pitched for them for several years, for I guess 3 years. On April 27th of 2002, he threw a one-hitter against the Seattle Mariners. I remember this day, but I do not remember anything about that game. However, I do remember I was with you that very day when none other than Boston's own Derek Lowe threw a no-hitter, and we were at the pumping company with Randy Richardson.
I do recall, yes.
You do remember that. Huh?
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
It's funny how you can remember anything with penny pitchers at the pumping company.
Yeah, I think it's been torn down now since then, right? I hope. Traded to Oakland for Jeremy Bonderman, and pitched with Oakland in 02 and 03. I think that was the Moneyball era when Oakland would go to the playoffs every year and lose, and he was a part of that. He made those teams and pitched in the playoffs unsuccessmally. Then he was traded to Toronto in 2004. You get traded a lot, if you notice. And made the All-Star team through a two-hitter. Good for him. Played for the Blue Jays, actually, for 3 years, from 04 to 06, and actually kind of established himself as a good starting pitcher at the time.
That's where I first knew of his existence,
right,
really.
Yeah, the 37 wins in 3 years, the 89 games started, 6 WAR overall. I mean, he was a serviceable kind of number 3, number 4 pitcher, right? We thought of him as like a number 3. And then in late 2006, he had an incident with then Blue Jays manager John Gibbons. Apparently, he'd given up 8 runs in the game. It was a third inning, and Gibbons came out to take him out of the game, and he didn't want to leave the game, and he refused to give him the ball. So after some back and forth, he finally did agree to leave the mound, but, an awkward moment. They had a confrontation in the tunnel. Gibbons apparently had a bloody nose, but no punches were thrown, apparently. So
apparently not.
just spontaneously burst into flames. He became a free agent at the end of that year and chose to go elsewhere. Got an offer from the Blue Jays, but took a matching offer from your Chicago Cubs instead. And I remember that. It was right before the 07 season, signed a 4-year, $40 million deal. The Cubs were really revving up at that point with the Sorianos of the world and the Ted Lillys and the Dempsters and whatnot, and building a contending team. He pitched for the Cubs, probably had his best stretch of his career, actually, in that 07, 08, 09 period where the Cubs made the playoffs 2 years in a row. During that 3-year stretch, he won 44 games, started 95 games, which is what can you ask for in 3 years, right? Had an ERA of just under 4, but had 13.1 WAR, which is pretty good for a 3. I mean, he made that $40 million back in with a year to spare. He pitched the Cubs home opener in 2007. I was there, I know, because I was at every home opener, so I must have been there. I don't remember the game, but I remember being there. And he started game 2 of the 2007 NDLS. Do you remember that? I think I remember game 1, Zambrano pitched against Webb and against Arizona, and the Cubs were a better team, I thought, but Arizona had some good pitching, and I remember watching it at Michael's Pizzeria, and Zambrano pitched great, but the Cubs lost. So game 2 was important because Lilly was pitching against Doug Davis or some bum, right? And the Cubs got up to a 2-0 lead, and things looked good. But then Lilly gave up a 3-run home run to Chris Young, and then gave up some more runs. And for some reason, Piniella left him in the game. He ended up pitching 3.1 innings, and he gave up 11 base runners. So over half the batters reached base, and gave up 6 earned runs. It seems like maybe in the playoffs you would take a guy out sooner than that in a best of 3 when it's game 2. But anyway, Cubs ended up losing the game, and I guess it was best of 5, but we just lost the first 3. So
it was best of 5.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that ended that.
It was Doug Davis. Ted Lilly did beat. Ted Lilly was pitching against Doug Davis in that game too. Yep.
Was he? Okay. 08 was even better because that was the year the Cubs played the Dodgers. Lilly was our 4th starter, and therefore did not have to pitch in the playoffs because the Cubs decided to get swept in 3. I think it was Zambrano, Dempster, and I don't remember who the third pitcher was, but was it Maddox maybe? I don't know. Somebody, who knows, but we didn't. Maybe not Maddox. It would have been I forget who. Well, anyway, didn't matter. I tried to block out that. That was such a great year in 08.
It was Rich Harden pitched Game 3.
Harden,
It was Dempster, Zambrano, Rich Harden.
Yeah. Anyway, that was really disheartening. I remember going to the first 2 games.
I was at in 2007 playoffs. I went to the Rich Hill game, the Game 3 that they lost.
Yes, me too. That was fun.
Yeah,
and not even close.
Yeah.
That was part of my stretch where, starting with the Bartman game, I went to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 consecutive playoff losses, which took us all the way to 2015, I think, when we got to go to that first Cardinals game and beat the living tar out of them. So it's
one of my favorite playoff experiences. Yeah.
It was. I've got a thing on the wall here with all the home runs we hit on it. That was a great game. Okay, so moving on, 2009, after the Cubs, that was a transitional year for the Cubs. They had been good in 7 and 8. They were starting to not be as good. Ted Lilly ended up being our sole all-star that year. He ended up with a 3.10 ERA and 5 WAR. I don't remember 5 WAR. That's pretty good, right?
Wow.
After the year, he had shoulder surgery to clean up a shoulder injury. 2010, he was hurt, but he was playing. On June 13th, I remember this game. He had a no-hitter going to the 9th inning against the Chicago White Sox. And stupid Juan Pierre got a base hit. Former Cub.
Yeah.
Got a base hit, and the Cubs ended up winning 1-0, but he missed the no-hitter. It would have been the first no-hitter since Milt Pappas.
So in 2008, the Cubs had the series against the Astros relocated to Milwaukee.
Right. Because the first home no-hitter.
Yes. But while you mentioned no-hitters, it made me remember that because of the hurricane, they moved the Cubs-Astros series to Milwaukee with no notice. So I went to both those games because the tickets went on sale and they were super cheap.
Right.
And
I was at a charity event the night that Zambrano pitched, sadly.
So I went to the Zambrano game. He pitches a no-hitter. That was amazing. The next day, there's 5,000 people in that building. It's like
all private Cubs fans, right?
Yes, and it's like a private Cubs game.
So no Astro fans made the trip up during the flood.
During the hurricane? No.
Hurricane.
And there's there's only 5,000 Cubs fans there. So it's just everyone's packed in the lower bowl, and it's just this empty stadium, and so it felt like a private Cubs game. Ted Lilly comes out and he pitches a no-hitter into the 7th inning. And we were losing our minds, especially those of us who were here.
No-hit baseball.
We were just here. We just watched an entire no-hitter, and so we were losing our minds in that going into
literally
the 7th inning.
Wrigleyville North as a title was created that weekend.
So that's one of my favorite Ted Lilly memories is watching him pitch that no-hitter after the Zambrano no-hitter.
Sure.
It was unbelievable all the way to the 7th inning. And then he gave up 1 hit over 7 innings total.
For a guy who never threw over 90 miles an hour, he managed, through his crafty stuff, to have quite a few games in his career of 1-hitters and 2-hitters and, just going deep into games. When he was on, curveball, mixing up his pitches, he could get people out. It was pretty impressive given his natural limitations on his fastball. So later in 2010, in July, at the trade deadline, July 31st, the Cubs, this is when you knew the Cubs were making the break from the past to the future. The Cubs traded the Riot, Ryan Theriot, and Ted Lilly to the Los Angeles Dodgers for the famous, do you remember who they got back? Second baseman?
To the Dodgers?
Yeah.
Did they get was this the let's see, this was not Mark Grudzielanek trade, was it?
No, it was not.
No, I don't remember.
Blake DeWitt.
Oh, that's why I don't remember. Okay. I was thinking about my Dodgers second baseman. There you go.
Yeah. So Blake DeWitt. With the Dodgers, Lilly had a good 3 years. Injury prone or injury plagued, but in 10, 11, and 12, he pitched well. he ended up retiring with nerve damage in his neck. But he had a lengthy career. He pitched for 13 years. He ended up with a record of 130 and 113 with a 4.14 ERA in 1,982 innings. He really was kind of a. You think of Zambrano as being a real horse, but Lilly, man, he could go deep into games, and he could pitch every year, like in his prime, 35 games, 29.2 WAR, which is pretty impressive, and an OPS plus of 106. So slightly above average pitcher over a 13-year period. He was hired by the Cubs as a special assistant in March of 14.
Yep.
And then in January of 15, he was indicted on 3 counts of felony insurance fraud because he inflated a repair bill on a recreational vehicle where he'd already filed a insurance claim. And in the state of California, they keep track of that, and got caught. So he pled it down to a misdemeanor, paid a $2,500 fine, and did 250 hours of community service. I'm not sure where. And that's kind of where I lost track of him. I don't know. He did not make the Hall of Fame, and I haven't seen him much in the last 10 years. I don't know if you've had any Ted Lilly appearances, but
no,
but
not since a special assistant to the general manager, whatever the Dwight Schrute-esque title was that he had there.
But I always remember him for being part of that really fun time, that 07-08 time. For those who were around, you'll recall that was just it was the Lee and Ramirez and Giovanni Soto era. It was it was just a fun time on the Cubs.
And Zambrano dominating. Yeah, it was great.
Zambrano dominating and just, Soriano and they just had great lineups back then too.
Lou Piniella
Big Lou.
Great. Yeah.
So Ted Lilly was part of that, and so we'll always have that. In his career, he ended up starting 3 games in the playoffs. Fortunately, he had a 6.61 ERA, so maybe it's just as good he didn't pitch that Game 4 against the Dodgers. But he managed to do well, and he had some memorable moments. So that's the book on Ted Lilly.
Well, with that, we are going to wrap things up. Make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms at Wrigleyville Nat. Make sure that you're helping the show by going to our YouTube channel where the video version of this podcast is. You can search for Wrigleyville Nation Podcast. Give us the subscribe, the likes on the videos. It helps us work the algorithm so other Cub fans can find the show. And make sure you tell your Cub fan friends about the show. We rely on your word of mouth. So Cub fans know other Cub fans, so make sure you're telling them about the podcast, how to subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate it. And if you want to support the show financially, the best ways to do that is 1, go to the store, buy some merchandise. We've got hats, shirts, mugs, all kinds of fun stuff. The link to the store is available, of course, at our website, wrigleyvillenation.com. Or if you go to any of our social media platforms, the link tree at the top will take you right to our store where you can buy any of those things. Getting a shirt, getting a mug, getting a hat helps us immensely. Every single penny, of course, goes right back into the show. And our patrons over at patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation, they're the ones that keep us ad-free every single year. Every little bit helps over there. So you want to give us $1 to say thank you. We appreciate it. It keeps us from having to read ads, and it keeps the lights on over here, and mic cables and all the hosting fees and everything that goes into bringing you this podcast every week during the season since 2013. So appreciate all of the help over at our Patreon. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you again next time.